Patty, would you mind just recording? Thanks, buddy. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining. We're carrying on with the session and unpacking the dashboard in terms of what everything is. And I just want to show you before kickoff. So this is the link which I've just dropped into the chat room. It takes you to this page. And on this page are all the previous weeks. So it's all the videos, and literally you can just scroll across this way, and you can get all the previous week sessions that we've covered. So it kind of tells you what the session was about and how to access. Just click on the video and you can watch the video. Okay, so for those of you who've missed any sessions or will miss into the future, it'll be on that link I've just dropped into the chat room, and this is kind of where the videos are. Okay, and then you can there's also some stuff further down on the previous videos we've done, you know, previous information. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. And we are progressing quite well. Quite excited about you know, what's going on. We've got a few new few more builds coming in soon, which is great. But don't worry, we'll let you know. Again, as per the previous weeks, please would you just add any questions or comments into the chat area, and then when I'm finished the discussion, I'll answer them if there are any, and you know, we'll just kind of wrap up with any comments or concerns. All right, so let's mosey on. Okay, so in P4P, on this dashboard that goes out, we have pretty much, well, we've covered the first kind of program details, what the clients want in terms of high-level discussion, progress, you know, achievement and stuff. The second level here was what we've also covered, which is all about the assessment of tracking the individual learner and their progress in terms of assessment. Today, I want to look at the portfolio of evidence information, which is all four of these graphs or all four of these areas, but they show different things depending on what it is that you want to see. So the portfolio of evidence is a very intriguing discussion because one qualification across four providers all have on the same, you know, same qualification, all have a different portfolio of evidence, and they all look different. And every provider collects evidence differently, and every provider enjoys the opportunity of the way they collect evidence. And then every assessor looks at evidence differently and assesses differently as well. And we've seen this quite incredible kind of gap between each assessor of a provider and how they look at evidence. The other thing we see quite a lot is a lot of providers use written tests as skills-based evidence. So you know, it's, you know, show me that you can serve a table, and to show you, they go, well, how would you serve a table? And the person will write an answer as skills-based evidence. So the QCTO is going to be pushing back or changing that in totality. So just as you go as assessors, please be aware that written work is not going to be accepted much more moving forward if it's a skills-based initiative. So if someone needs to be demonstrating something, you're going to have to look, and your providers you work for, give them, please provide the advice. You're going to have to look at a different way of your portfolio. So that would typically be videos or audio, you know, where someone can actually do a voice note instead of writing stuff as an option, and probably other ways as well. But I just want to put on the table out there, and this is where this particular discussion today becomes very interesting because it's about the portfolio. So I'm going to work my way kind of from this graph first, because everything else kind of is derivative of that. So in P4P, what we do is we require the learners to load a portfolio of evidence. Well, we don't, that's what needs to happen. And we work with the concept of what's called document classes. They're also kind of known as folders. And if you as a person are not very good, with all respect, but are not very good with naming conventions and folders within your computer, this becomes a little bit kind of a way that we help you track that. So that's why we have this thing called a document class, and it does come with its own confusion, which I will talk through today. Okay, so I'm going to click on this third one here. What the portfolio or evidence information shows us, and the reason why we created it is when a learner comes into P4P, we have two types of portfolio. We have legislative requirements, and then we have assessment portfolios. So your legislative portfolios are portfolios that are not assessed. They bring no value to the well, sorry, please excuse the dogs behind me. They bring no value to the portfolio of evidence or the demonstration of skill. These POE items, sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry, I've got some dogs going mad in the background, which was unexpected. So let me carry on. So the legislative requirements is evidence that is provided that's not linked to your portfolio of evidence or the demonstration of skill. So it's very much not assessed, which includes your CV and your ID and your enrollment forms. However, what we've come to learn is whether it be a hard copy kind of file that gets submitted to the assessor or online, the assessor should take a look at that because you're never quite sure if it is a CV, if it is an ID, if it is an enrollment form. And then the other challenge that we find is, although these documents are loaded onto the CETA system, when the verifier logs in, when the verifier comes to verify the moderation, they want to see these documents again. So it's very difficult to get away from not having it in your portfolio of evidence. So what happens in P4P is on the assessment related side, you are able to take a snapshot look at who the learner is in the cohort and what evidence is there and what evidence is missing. So this particular page, although it says, for example, learner 1 has a CV, from this page, you can't tell if it is a CV. You can just tell that there is evidence loaded into the CV document class, but you can have a snapshot. And what you can also see now is what's missing. So we can see that learner 2 does not have a CV, does not have an ID. And because this dashboard is provided on a weekly basis, you are able to pick this up prior to internal moderation, prior to the week before things, normally a week before internal moderations, the administrators are running around like chickens with no heads because they're having to go through each portfolio and make sure that each portfolio has a CV and an ID. And so that's what this is providing you from the legislative details. Now, because of the way we've also designed P4P at the moment, we have this learning program certificate document class. So what this is about in P4P, it's about the attendance certificate that a client or that a training provider will provide to a learner. This is here, it's not during the program that would be populated. That is generally when there is a statement of result, a statement of achievement, or you're providing a certificate that's not generated by the CETA, or when you want to put the CETA certificate into the POE folder for the learner. This particular one will change. Otherwise, there's no real need for a portfolio of evidence item in there at the start of the program. That's your legislative requirements. So when you log into P4P and you go into a learner's portfolio of evidence folder, these items will also be found in the portfolio of evidence folder in this area here. However, when you add them, you will obviously give it a name. If you want to give a comment, you can, but it's in this document class area here that becomes important because this is the different filing areas that you're working with. So when you select CV here, when we pull the report, it shows up here. When you select ID or enrollment form in this area, that's what shows up in this area, and that's what shows up on all the reports. So it is quite important that your administrators and your facilitators and the people that help to load evidence, if this is generally more your administration side, if they're loading the stuff, it gets loaded correctly. What also helps is with this dashboard, the learners have been on the pre-assessment meeting, you get a graph that looks like this. As the administrator or even as the assessor, you can log on a day before, even on the morning, you can see your learners and go, oh, learner 2 doesn't have a CV. So while you're on training, there's a support option here where the assessor or the facilitator or the evidence collector can just say to the learner, look, I need your CV. Or the learner can log on, they can load their evidence here as well. And in week 2, then that would change. Okay, so that's on the legislative requirements. This will also grow, maybe not so much, but with the QCTO, we're having a look at their requirements, because what the QCTO is very excited about is on P4P, because the way you pull the reports aligns with their particular way of, presenting evidence or registering learners in terms of layouts. And because the documents the learning details have been checked, it speeds up their process as well. So P4P is adding really good value to the QCTO. They're quite excited. Okay, so that's the legislative. Then we have the assessment required portfolios. Now, the assessment required portfolios, everybody designs it differently in terms of how they design their programs, and every client does it differently. So when you are assessing for 3 or 4 different training providers, the way they do things is different. In this particular example, we've taken a module where there is a portfolio of evidence required per unit standard. So what would happen is here, a learner would need to create a portfolio of evidence specifically for unit standard 114592, a unit standard, and those combined portfolios provide the modular or the module unit the module portfolio. This is assessment related. So what happens here is we can see that this learner here on row 11, learner 3, has not submitted evidence for the first unit standard, has not submitted evidence for the second unit standard, and that's what's showing us. Now, when I say they haven't submitted evidence, it's either that they have not actually loaded evidence into P4P, or they've put the evidence into the wrong class. So what I mean by that is, when you go back to P4P and you're loading evidence, we have this assessment related document class down here. If you're looking around here at the document class area, when I click this, it opens up another document class here. And when you drop down here, you start seeing all the different, what are called checklists, or in the modules that the evidence can relate to. So remember, you're relating evidence to a module. It's the same as the black lever arch files. You would have potentially 5 black lever arch files, or within a lever arch file, you would have dividers. And the person would put the relevant content into the right, behind the right divider or in the right file. Because if they put a communication evidence into a workplace numeracy document divider, the assessor wouldn't look for it there. They would look for it, and then if they don't find it in the right place, the assessor will go, oh, there's no evidence submitted. And that's what's going on here. So there is an upskilling or an awareness that needs to take place from the assessor, from the learners, from the evidence collectors, from the facilitators, anybody who's loading evidence. It's very important that they put it into the right document class. Now, we've explored as P4P many ways of doing this differently. But ultimately, even if you're doing email backward and forward portfolios, it's still sitting in a Dropbox somewhere, or a OneDrive folder, or a SharePoint folder, and that folder still has to be structured. It's the structure that provides the fluidity in e-assessment. Right, so what this is now showing us is that there is evidence or there isn't evidence submitted for the particular portfolio required for the program. Okay, so that's the that's what the EPOE, or that's what the portfolio scenarios are showing us. Now, if I go back to this page, what I did was I selected the third option. So the third option shows you the legislative and the assessment requirements all in one page. And remember, you can filter. So if you want to go show me everybody for this module who doesn't have a portfolio of evidence, filter works. Okay, so you can, when you're dealing with 50, 60 learners, either you can filter the learner or you can filter just those who are missing IDs and those who are missing CVs. What we've done as dashboard, though, is we have created this. So you can look at just the legislative requirement options if you want to. And you can look at just the assessment related criteria if you want to. So we have divided it up for you. So you can actually have, just legislative, sorry, I knew that was going to happen. So you can look at just legislative requirements. You can look at just assessment related, or you can look at both together. Okay, so those are the three options in the ePOE side. Okay, now, this is so important when it comes to tracking what's going on with the learners, is their portfolio. And often I find assessors, what they'll do is if they can't find a portfolio, they won't assess. They go, oh, no portfolio, I don't know what to do. Technology. It's really not that. It's really a case of, oh, there's no portfolio. Let me conduct my assessment and let me put in a 1 for the learner. I actually physically assess the learner and I go, you are not yet competent. Remedial work, please load a portfolio of evidence item. Please add an item. Because in P4P, when you're in the POE folder, the item that's loaded with the name has a date that it's added. So by conducting the assessment and showing the administrator and moderator that you did your assessment, but there's no portfolio, when they do load the portfolio, there is a date here that shows that your set, because remember, your assessments are date stamped. So there's a date here that also shows the portfolio was added late. And that's the correlation of the assessment process. That also gives the learner their first assessment go. So learner, you're not getting, you've got 3 goes. In your first assessment go, you didn't have a portfolio. So from an assessor perspective, you're not picking up extra work that, oh, the learner didn't have a portfolio. Now I've got to start my assessment process and do 3 assessments. Now we've got to track it. Of course, you can do it that way if you want to. It's fine. It's just extra work for you. And this is what this criteria is showing you. So when it comes to assessing, simply if you come to this page, have a flip through before you assess, see which learners don't have a portfolio, go to those assessors first in P4P, just have a double check for your own sanity, and then go and assess them and sign them off. It's very simple, and that's the way you are not yet competent because you don't have a portfolio of evidence. Remedial work, add your portfolio for week 2, because that's going to be the process of assessment. So that's what this is showing us. Now, what then the last option on the portfolio of evidence over here, these are the graphical representations. So what this shows you, it shows you this for the whole batch. So if you are assessing a batch of learners, or if you're a part of a batch of learners, the graphs show you, pretty much the date that those grow and how many learners there are on the particular program. But you can see that for CVs, for the whole cohort, 4 learners have added a CV, 1 learner has not added a CV as part of a portfolio of evidence. So you can actually track this. You can actually track this from, if you are doing many cohorts, you can start tracking who you're working with, who the administrators are, they're tracking you. These are the modular portfolios that are required. So you can see that module 4 has 4 learners, or 80% of the learners. And we can start tracking over a period of time how the program is rolling out. And this is quite interesting because as an assessor, you can start getting great feedback on the post-assessment report going, always module 2, we don't get a good portfolio, or we don't get portfolio submitted, or you start getting some really good kind of content, to review and data. What we also do is we provide you we take a screenshot of this week's kind of graphs, and we drop it into this side here. So you can start seeing week on week. So for example, in this scenario here, there was no portfolios of evidence added in this last graph. And here in this week, it grew. So you can see that then there's stuff changing, stuff happening, stuff going on within your cohort of people or learners that you're assessing, and your administrators and your clients can also see that. And again, you start learning to understand what the data is showing you. And when you get that, you can start making good, educated decisions on what you need to do. Okay. So in terms of the portfolio of evidence in the dashboard, that's what it's showing you. The first area is showing you all the just legislative documents, what's there, what's not there. The second area is showing you just the assessment-related evidence that are there or not there. The third area is showing you a combined view per learner of the two different assessment criteria. And the last one is showing you a combined version of the cohort for the program that you are seeing. This area is directly linked to the POE folder, which is this folder of the learner. It draws all the evidence from this folder, and it puts it into kind of the graphs. Things to note, when there is evidence here, this particular dashboard cannot guarantee you that this is a CV. So as an assessor, you should download it. When it says CV, you should download it. You should make sure it's CV, and then you should put a version 2, saying that, yes, you signed it and it is a version 2. Some CETAs require that, some CETAs don't, but I would really like to offer for you, don't take it for granted that it is a CV, because when the moderator comes in and checks, if it's not a CV, they're going to come and find the assessor and the administrator, and then everybody gets into a big bun fight as to the problem. Really, when you're assessing the portfolio, click on it, have a look at it, check it's a CV. It might be loaded into the wrong class, and that way we can neaten up this portfolio. The other thing to consider, please, is remember the version control as the assessor. So it just saves putting extra portfolios into the portfolio folder. Although there's no problem with having lots of portfolio items, it just gets very difficult to navigate. So the version control works pretty well as well. Right. So that's what I wanted to cover today in terms of the portfolio. I see that there is a comment, a chat. All right. So when you assess the legislative requirements, you sign and upload back again onto P4P. Again, although I recommend that, please just check what the policy of your client is that you're assessing for, because you need to get the consistency. Every assessor, if one assessor does it, all assessors need to do it. And that's where the assessment ecosystem, it's very important that everybody works together towards the same policy, towards the same demonstration.
Okay, but then if you say, for instance, they don't require you then to upload it back again as a version 2, how will they know that you've checked that it's a CV or whatever?
Exactly. And that's a good question. So the only thing that will happen, May, is this green here will turn to blue. That's the only thing that happens. So we'll know that it's been accessed.
Oh, because I've downloaded it.
Because you've downloaded it, yes. Okay. So we'll know that. But again, we won't know for sure what you've done with it. Just because it's downloaded, it might just sit in your downloads folder, and you might then clean up one day and delete it all. So the better practice would be to upload the version 2. That would be better, probably best practice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments or anything around this particular portfolio of evidence side that anyone has?
Yeah, sorry, Darren, I just want to clarify.
Yes, go ahead.
The CVs and certificates of the learners are imperative to actually check and download, especially if CAT comes into play.
100%.
So,
absolutely.
For me, it's a requirement. It's not a nice to have.
So I have to agree with you, but it's very difficult when you are the service provider telling your client what they should and shouldn't do. So we could just provide you with what we've learned and what we recommend. And then as the clients, you get to make your final decision. So it is the better route. I do try and guide my clients in that route, because we get the complaints often that, yeah, we've done all of this into the CETA learner management information system, we've done all this work, blah blah blah, and when the verifier comes, they go, where is it? Because we asked the CETA, we said to the CETA, why is it so imperative that the CV and the ID, everything's in the portfolio of evidence folder if it's already on your system? And their comment was, we don't always know what's on the system, and often people load, it's the same thing as what we've got. A CV is actually an ID. ID is actually a photograph of his auntie who's playing with her dog. And the CETAs turn around and they go, we don't have enough resources, which is the truth. So you take a CETA like services that's about 3 years behind, but we're talking about something like 80,000 or 100,000 portfolios.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they don't have the manpower to check everything. And that's why P4P is becoming more and more accepted and more exciting, because we double check it. By the time it gets to the CV or the QCTO, they're starting to trust that the work is there. And if it's in green, we actually had a recent internal moderation where the internal moderator overturned they remedial because the CV and ID was in green. They're like, oh, that wasn't checked, and they overturned because they're starting to trust the process, which is fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree.
Cool. Thanks for your feedback. Thank you. Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you for today. I really appreciate it. Again, I'll load this video. Next week, we'll start looking into you as the assessor. So do come next week. And then please also start putting down more topics on P4P that you'd like us to continue with, because we've got another 2 weeks on this particular dashboard. And then there's 2 more weeks of other stuff I'd like to cover in terms of some of the new functionality, which we'll show. But if there's anything that you as an assessor actually would like to know, anything, please, and for these morning discussions, please just let me know in the WhatsApp group. Can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? We'll do the research on it for you. If you want to know more about stuff, and then let's bring those up and we can talk about them. So, moving forward doesn't necessarily have to be a P4P thing. We could also make it a discussion thing, and I'll happily kind of lead that discussion in terms of what's going on in this world of assessment. So it's quite exciting what's going on. So please feel free. This will be on that page a little bit later, and have a really good day going forward.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a good
Darren.
day. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Darren. Bye, everybody.